These days, it's not just a race against technology and AI, it's a race against brand, culture, and strategy. And that's what allows us as a small business, compared to our larger kind of competitors, to outperform them, is we're a tight aligned team that can move faster and deliver exceptional value to the customer. AI and technology blur the line so much these days as to what's real and what's not. So authenticity has become a competitive advantage in itself, and it comes back to, talking with your customers and being human. I think that's my philosophy in how I try and run the business is we don't try and do everything, but we try and just do what we do really, really well and few things better, which ultimately allows us to focus on our core business.
Welcome back to another episode of Growth Unlocked. I'm your host, Kieran Krohn. Today, we're going to break down how smaller companies can win and outpace bigger competitors using AI and technology. Emma Davison took a business that was built on spreadsheets and turned it into a tech-enabled operation that's competing with listed companies who have much deeper pockets. Her journey from being a physio to now CEO shows how non-traditional founders can use AI, speed, and focus to punch far above their weight. Emma, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks, Kieran, for having me.
Let's do it. So, when you look at your journey so far, what do you think has allowed Virtual HQ as, I guess, a smaller company compared to some of the other larger players in the market to really compete using AI and technology?
I think ultimately, Kieran, it's not about outspending our competitors, because that's never going to happen. It's about outstrategizing them. And overall, I think small businesses win by being clear, disciplined, and very intentional with both how they use technology and also general strategy. So for us, it's knowing your business inside out, listening to customers and focusing on solutions to solve those pain points. I think the other thing as well on that point is that we've got a very flat structure in our small business, so we can make decisions quickly and implement them, test them, and that often as well is a way that we can compete against the larger kind of competitors in our market. It's been interesting too, like with us, we've engaged a technology partner, and we wouldn't have had the budget to hire in-house specialists. So by partnering with someone a team that's exceptional at what they do across UX, technology, and strategy, we're tapping into years of experience and expertise that we otherwise wouldn't have had, and that also allows us to stay very competitive in our market as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you raised, particularly when it comes to the strategy piece, but being really close to your customer, understand what they really care about. When it comes to being close to the customer and making sure that you're in tune with what they care about, that's something that I think that from a technology perspective can be super interesting around how you can take these all this rich information, this contextual insight from customer conversations, whether that's from your sales team or your customer service team, and really use that as a way of understanding what your customers truly care about. Is there anything that you've done around that with Virtual HQ, or like how do you stay really close to and make sure you actually understand the needs of your customers?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and something I'm very passionate about, I think, in our business. And again, coming back to the structure of the team, is that I don't see my role as a CEO is any more important as the team that are answering the sales calls and dealing directly with our customers. So being on that front line, and equally me getting on the phone and talking to a customer through that sales process and asking them along the way, was this an easy experience? How did you hear about us? Did you have any problems? Documenting that down, and then that also gives me a really big picture as to where we need to focus our resources and implement advancements in our technology to improve that overall customer experience, as well as the experience of my team as well on that front line. So again, it's just being not afraid to get your hands dirty and be involved in the day-to-day operations as well as the larger strategy.
Yeah, and what I love about that, Emma, is how you're still really involved in what's important in the business is staying close to the customer, right? I think sometimes CEOs or leaders of the business, want to remove themselves, and I can understand that you need to a certain point to be able to, scale a business as it gets bigger. But I do think that there's relevance there in every CEO and top line leader to really try to spend time speaking to customers?
Absolutely. And I read something that said, behind every business, there's a person and a human. And I think that staying close to that, as much as technology is advancing, we've got, AI taking over the virtual reception space, or really driving that area. But ultimately, people love connecting with people. And if someone knows that you're in a leadership position or the CEO, and you've spent time talking to the customer and finding out about how their journey was, whether it be good or bad, that really adds a lot of weight. They feel not just like another number or another sale. For us, every virtual address, it's the front of someone's business, and we really want to delight the customer, which is a Warren Buffett phrase, but something I always think about. It's our number one core value of our business.
I love it. It's awesome. And one of the things that I remember you touched on when we spoke prior to this, Emma, was placing a really strong emphasis on the importance of brand and identity. And it looks like from what you're doing in terms of coming into the business is looking at it from both a brand perspective, both personally and then with the business as well. How do you think that brand plays a role in helping smaller companies compete in markets that might be dominated by bigger competitors?
Yeah, I love this question. I think brand is a multiplier. It adds trust and clarity to your operation, and it's about how your business operates internally, but also how it's perceived externally, and how you can then scale built based on trust and strong foundations. And interestingly, I really think that these days it's not just a race against technology and AI, it's a race against brand, culture, and strategy. And that's what allows us as a small business compared to our larger kind of competitors to outperform them, is we're a tight aligned team that can move faster and deliver exceptional value to the customer. And I think brand plays a really important role in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're seeing this more and more, right? Back to the point that you made before around, behind every business is a human. It's these businesses that are, they're probably thriving more are the ones that, typically have, whether it's a CEO or a founder or someone in the leadership team who is relatively vocal, spends a lot of time um, having opinions, putting themselves out there, getting in front of the camera. I mean, I think all of us, like when we think about Tesla, would think of Elon, right? And you could say the same thing about a lot of different companies. And so I think that there's some, not even some, there's a lot of truth around that, around the importance of business leaders actually being more and more present in the places where their customers are speaking their time, because that's how customers are going to connect with them for the most part, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think on that point, which is so true, is AI and technology blur the line so much these days as to what's real and what's not. So authenticity has become a competitive advantage in itself, and it comes back to talking with your customers and being human. So I think that's my philosophy in how I try and run the business is we don't try and do everything, but we try and just do what we do really, really well, and few things better, which ultimately allows us to focus on our core business, and give the best result to our clients.
Yeah, 100%. And I find it really fascinating when we spoke prior to this around your background. I mean, coming from a pretty non traditional history with being a physio and spending time overseas in Germany, and now, leading a company. You didn't, I think you mentioned, didn't have any formal business background. I guess, talk us through that. That's something that I don't think we see all the time, and it's an amazing story. How did you adapt to leading a commercial operation from, being a physio in the past?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think I've always, since being a kid, have been passionate about business, and I've always seen my dad, who's been a serial entrepreneur since I was a little girl, and my mum's always been very successful in her own right and very driven. So I think even though I was fascinated with healthcare and went down that avenue, it certainly set me up for commercial leadership more than I ever would have thought of. And I think, I remember being in the hospital wards thinking, what does anyone do in a office all day? Being in a hospital, it's a very different kind of environment. But little did I know it's that those skill sets that really translate into what I'm doing now every day. So I think the biggest thing for me, Kieran, is the ability to listen. And I always tell my team in the office, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. We should do double the listening and half the talking. And, the best leaders don't just speak well, they listen exceptionally well. And that's, I think, one thing I've really tried to implement across our business. So if we're not filling the space with talking, we're creating better space for thinking and collaborating with our team.
It's a great analogy, two ears and one mouth, and I think that's the kind of ratio that we should all try to practice. And I think it is also one of those things to call out that a lot of the time when we are listening, we're kind of listening more so to respond as opposed to listening to necessarily understand. And so that active listening, I think, is something that's really crucial, and just avoiding distractions in that process. But I guess the thing that I'm keen to hear from you, Emma, is like, going through that transition couldn't have been easy, right? Like, I'm sure there's been a lot that you've had to learn. Like, what do you think have been the biggest lessons that you've learned through that process of moving into being a CEO that others could potentially learn from if they're looking to go through a similar career path?
I think there's so many different things. Another core, I guess, idea that's just come out of that is um, having grace under pressure. It's another phrase I tell myself all the time. Coming from a hospital ward where there's things going on everywhere and you're under very high pressure situations all the time, is being able to replicate that in the business kind of world and landscape, especially when we're launching new technology and going live with a new brand. That can be quite stressful. There's things breaking, going wrong, the team are getting stressed. And I think as a leader, you need to be able to maintain that composure, and maintaining your own psychology, I think, is the most important thing, especially during times of change and transformation, which has been very much our business this year. So I would say that's probably the core thing that comes to mind there. But I think also as well, just being curious, listening, learning. We're in an age where we've got so much access to technology that it's made learning really quite limitless. And so it's allowed me to hear from businesses at all stages, from startups to growth stage to then exiting for hundreds of millions of dollars. And you hear the fundamentals that these founders and owners carry through their business journey. You learn what they do really well, and you learn from their mistakes as well. And all of that has really allowed me to become more confident as a leader. But yeah, it's this whole, again, structured problem solving that comes back from my healthcare days.
You mentioned, learning from and spending time with other founders. Have you noticed any, common themes or threads throughout those conversations, or are they all been quite varied? And is there anything that you could potentially point out that you think would be a commonality between those different founders and leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I think number one, and you hear it all the time, is just grit and perseverance. I think running a business sometimes is very overglorified, but it is just hard work, and there's no getting around just knowing your business processes, knowing your numbers, and if you look at those processes and incrementally improve them, that whole 1% better each day approach, you will get there. I think the other thing as well that's come out more so than ever, especially in recent years, is the weight placed on culture and building a good team. Particularly when you're a small business, you don't have um, the resources to spend on hiring the wrong person. You just have to get it right. So for us, that's been a huge. I've learned so much from other podcasts and other leaders where they've hired for culture, and skills can be learnt. And I very much have taken that, and I've hired two amazing individuals in our company this year, who I really think will be a valuable asset as we grow the business. And that's based on what I've taken from other founders who have done the same thing or have made mistakes and told me what not to do as well. So yeah, very much.
So when you're going through a recruitment process and having interviews, testing for their not just their attributes, but their fit from a cultural perspective. I would assume that you also have some kind of definition around that, like a culture code or the kind of values that are important to the business and things that you would be looking out for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't try and again, something I've probably picked up through just learning and being curious is, I really want it to be a genuine, I've always seen any job or any employee, it's a 50-50 relationship. We want them to be happy just as much as they want to be happy, or we want to be happy, employing them. So as part of like the first round of what I do each time is I give everyone who I'm planning on potentially doing an interview with a list of questions that are all fairly value orientated. Could be something like, what drains you at work or what gives you the most energy at work. I describe your ideal work day. So it's not so much because the CV tends to give a lot of information about education and their experience across various platforms or organizations and their skill sets. So I'm really testing for character. And in our team, where we're a small team, it's just imperative that we've got A grade players on our team, in order to compete with larger kind of organizations in our field. So yeah, very much culturally aligned first, and then if they progress to the interview stage, that's when we can dig a bit deeper into, if they've been part of change management, or different technology and digital implementations across their business career, how they deal with stress, all that kind of stuff. So it's usually a 4 or 5 stage process, which, yeah, it hasn't been like that before when I came into the business, but I really, yeah, value the cultural side of it.
I mean, taking people through that relatively long and maybe what the candidates would might feel is like an arduous process probably
Yeah.
uh, is the right thing to do. And I've noticed that some of the best companies do the same thing as well. I think when I got my job at HubSpot, it was a 6 stage interview process, and I kind of felt like it was never going to end. But I can definitely understand why they do that to make sure that you're, I guess, finding the best quality people that are the best fit for the company and the culture.
Yeah, totally. And even, I mean, our last stage, I take them to a more of an informal setting, like it might be a cafe, or we might even, have a drink or something if we're pretty certain that we're going to hire that person, to test a lot of skills that you don't otherwise see in a very structured formal interview. So how they treat wait staff, how they go when things don't quite go to plan. They're very subtle kind of things, but again, you're just seeing people in different environments, because when you're in a business, particularly a small one, there's so much change happening all the time, and it's easy to kind of prepare. Well, not easy to prepare for an interview, but it's a very structured environment, and running a small business and being part of a small business certainly isn't always that structured. So you need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, no, I hear you for sure. Emma, I guess kind of going back to the topic around, using technology and automation, et cetera, to really be competitive with some other the bigger competitors in the market. How would you typically prioritize things in terms of the processes that you might like look to automate first, or think about how to actually make sure that you're working on the right initiatives at the right time?
Yeah, I think what we've always been very focused on is automating the pain points first, where what slows us down, what shows us inconsistencies across the business, what frustrates the customer, but what also frustrates our team, and drains our team. So I think larger organizations, the makers around technology tend to be, they don't own the processes at the front line. And therefore, you see a lot of these digital transformations are very ineffective, they're expensive, and they're slow. So I've always kind of taken the approach that, you need to understand the day-to-day processes, and what is repetitive admin work that you can then automate, which means that your staff are then able to contribute to higher value tasks such as account management and touching base with your clients, which will then help grow the business but also retain customers. So, yeah, I think from a priority point of view, you're looking at the pain points, and out of those pain points, what you can automate.
Yeah, I think the point you made there around spending the time actually getting to understand on an individual contributor perspective and even like level up line managers around like spending time with them to really understand like what is their daily workflow? What does their life actually look like? What are all the things that are slowing them down? What are those repetitive mundane tasks that can potentially be automated? That's a really good starting point that I think a lot of businesses actually skip is looking at things from the top down as opposed to the bottom up. And having that view really allows you to get that perspective to understand, where the systems and the technology can be best placed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's an iterative approach, right? Like for me, I heard this phrase that said, "If you're not embarrassed by your MVP, then you didn't launch early enough." And I think that gave me a lot of kind of confidence that what we did at the time when we launched was the right thing to do. And it's very daunting, but once you're on the water and sailing, it's much easier to change direction than kind of from the beach. So then you're launching, you're learning, you're iterating, and yeah, that's how you can kind of stay ahead because your priorities change as well. Once you have launched your or in the process of developing new technology, what you thought the customer might want could be different when you actually go live. So again, being able to adapt in real time, I think, is really important and maintain that composure under pressure. So yeah.
And it's never been easier, I think, to take that iterative approach, right? Particularly with, everyone's vibe coding these days, from, mums and dads, maybe. I'm not sure if I've seen anyone of that generation that are vibe coding yet, but a lot of people within companies, leaders, etc., have the ability to have an idea, to create an MVP, to spin something up really quickly. I'm not sure if you've seen like some of the advancements that Gemini 3 have had recently, but there's so many tools to do that kind of stuff these days with Replit and Cursor and Lovable. I've actually just been working on some things internally for Scale Station, and I don't really think there's any reason why you can't take an idea to an MVP in, a couple of days. Previously, that would have probably taken you a couple of months and a lot more time, money, and resource. And I think that's where things are heading, right? To understand, does this idea actually translate into something that's going to be usable and helpful for customers or for the users?
Yeah, absolutely. You're very right. And I think that's where it comes down to choosing the right partners, whether that's internally hiring someone or outsourcing someone to help you build and implement that technology. Like for us, we have an amazing company that we work with who had a lot of base code that we were able to leverage for our software, which allowed us to then it cut costs, but it also allowed us to move quicker, and that was great because then we could again iterate and continually improve it. But we had that foundation already there, and we were able to leverage that, which was really really helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's Yeah, I think it's one of these kind of things where you just need to experiment. The gone are the days of spending a lot of time on trying to get things right the first time, and yeah, like the pace and the velocity that you can run these experiments now is pretty amazing. I mean, I have no idea how to code, but the fact that I can spin up an application in a couple of hours is proof that you don't need to wait. I think that's the key, right? Moving fast and speed is one of those kind of things that I see being quite a massive advantage, and
Mhm.
probably has helped virtual HQ to be really competitive in your market.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think speed and focusing on what we do and doing it really well. Because ultimately, again, you've got limited resources as a smaller business. So you've really, even within technology, it can be quite overwhelming. There's so much out there these days to be able to do. But saying no to things, I think, is equally as important as what you say yes to. And again, that comes down to focus, which is my big word for 2026, is just, focusing on what we do really well and continuing to improve. As you say, it may not be perfect, but it's this whole idea of progress over perfection and 1% better every time. And if you can improve one process, then that will translate into a better experience for the customer, which is what ultimately it's all about. That's going to then create trust and help with your brand as well. So it's just this constant flow on effect. But yeah, I definitely agree that getting out there and then being able to pivot and adapt is very important in this day and age where things are just moving so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes me wonder, Emma, I mean, what kind of impact has this approach and this system that you spoke about before had on your ability to do things like win customers, retain them, and delight them, and scale your operations and ultimately stay ahead of those larger competitors?
Yeah, I think having a commercial piece of software, which again was off the back of working with a incredible tech company, added credibility and trust. So, and that allows us to compete with bigger companies because it comes across that we know what we're doing and we understand the end to end workflow better than anyone else. So, instead of we remove friction instead of adding to it, again, it comes down to listening on the front line as to what it is the customer actually wants and us as decision makers, whether it be me or my dad, who's a director of the company, we're making decisions based on the actual reality of what the customers are experiencing on the front line and talking to our team every day about that as well. So for us, it's with our system, I'm very proud of it. It's definitely not perfect, but we've iterated to a point where it is, relatively reliable. It's clean. It's intuitive. I very much took the Apple kind of inspired approach of Steve Jobs, which he did an incredible job building Apple. So if that was my kind of idea, and then customers naturally associate that with professionalism, and that builds trust. And again, you then see this kind of loop where trust then continues to build your brand, and then you retain clients, and it drives new business. So yeah, for us, that's been kind of our focus.
I'm, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this thinking, okay, like it's no doubt that investing in these kind of systems and technology is really important and has had a major positive impact on your success. If someone wanted to, like, say, a go-to-market leader or a founder wanted to look at, taking a similar approach when it comes to leveraging technology and, seeing the same sort of results that you have, what would you say would be the kind of steps for them to start to take before they actually, set out on that journey of implementing the platform or the tech?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I would say first of all is don't try and boil the ocean. It's something my dad always has taught me, and it's true. I think having a very clear vision, and having a discipline towards that vision and how you're going to get there, is really important. So looking again at going back to basics, I think having a good high level approach can be really good, but picking something and refining those processes, whether it be part of a business or if you're building your own business, don't try and do too much at once, especially in that kind of startup phase. You see a lot of businesses that focus on, wanting to build several or release several products, and then they end up after 6, 12 months just focusing on one product and doing that really well. And I think that's where you need to kind of spend your time and focus. So that would be number one. I think choosing the right people to be around you, whether that be, at home or in the office, professionally or personally, and have a culture where you value ideas over hierarchy. I always say iron sharpens iron. My employees, I see them as teammates and not passengers, and we have a very much, 1 and 1 = 3 approach that all ideas are good ideas, and that's how you're going to get ahead is leveraging everyone's kind of ideas, and if they're passionate about that wider kind of vision you have, that's going to help you in the long run as well. So I think, yeah, not overcomplicating it. Don't boil the ocean. Get a good team together and really look at those processes because I think processes are ultimately the backbone of a very strong company, no matter whether you're small or large.
I love it. Emma, I got to say, it feels like you have a profound amount of wisdom for a leader of your age and for someone that's been in business for so
Thanks,
long.
Kieran. That's very kind. Thank you. It's yeah, I mean, I love business. I could eat, breathe, and live it all day, every day. And I think just staying curious and trying to become 1% better every day is what I strive to do. So yeah, that means a lot. Thank you.
My pleasure. I guess to round things out, thinking back, cast yourself to, your 21-year-old self, if you could transport back in time and have a conversation with yourself, what advice would you give Emma Davison at age 21?
Little Emma, I'd probably really hone in on the point that I think setbacks at the time can appear really challenging, but I think they're often disguised as opportunities. So I would say, just keep going, show grit and resilience and determination, because by far that's going to get anyone, including my 21-year-old self, ahead in life, and to stay curious. I know I've said that a lot this podcast, but be open to new ideas and opportunities and ways of thinking. And that way, nothing or no one's going to stop me or anyone else who's passionate about building a great business.
It's good advice. And I think that, there is this temptation sometimes to go, you know what, like there's an easier option. And I think that, as humans, sometimes we're a little bit like water and we seem to choose the path of least resistance. So I
Yeah,
think that, going through those testing times and understanding that, often like the challenge is the biggest gift in life, and kind of having to go through those situations, in hindsight, I think is a little bit easier to look back on them. At the time, you might be thinking, you know, why do I have to be going through this?
yeah.
But it is definitely all just about appreciating all those situations and trying to take out as much as you can.
Totally, totally. And I think, what's the saying? Growth and comfort don't coexist, and just continue to push yourself. And I think you'll get a lot out of life if you do so, not just in business, but just generally. So, yeah, I think it's just a learning journey. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for it.
Absolutely. Emma, thank you so much for your time. If people want to follow along on your journey or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best place for them to, where can they connect with you or learn about what's happening?
Yeah, would love to. My LinkedIn is always a good place to start. It's just Emma Davison, or our company LinkedIn as well, Virtual Headquarters. We also have an Instagram account, Virtual HQ, as well. So yeah, very happy to talk to anyone and chew the fat about all things business.
Love it. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of DMs, so be ready for that.
Yeah, thanks, Kieran.
Emma, thanks again. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale. If you enjoyed the show, it would really be appreciated if you can leave a 5-star review wherever you consume your podcasts. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes? If you'd like to learn about how to drive profitable scale in your business, gain clarity on your direction, and improve your business valuation, click the link in the show notes to connect with Kieran.